Hello and welcome to this video on inflation. In this video we're going to look at what is meant by inflation, how inflation is measured, and the effect inflation may have on businesses. Let's start off with a definition of what inflation is. Inflation is a rise in the average price level in an economy. So if you picture all the goods and services that are produced within an economy and you take an average, on average are those prices going up or are those prices going down? And it's normally expressed in a percentage. So for example, if inflation was 2%, it would mean that on average the prices of goods and services in the UK this year are 2% higher than they were last year. If the price level goes down, if prices fall, we call this deflation.
So this chart here shows us the rate of inflation that's occurred in Greece between the period 2003 and 2017. And what we can see is that prices were rising fairly stably between 2003 and 2008. So on average, prices were rising by roughly, should we say, just under 4% each year. We can then see another trend here where the rate of increase between 2010 and 2013 starts to slow. Prices are still rising here, but by a slower and slower rate. A final trend here is between 2013 and 2016, where we can see actually figures below zero, and this would be a period of deflation. So during this period, prices in Greece are actually decreasing from year to year. If we look in the UK, the UK has a target rate of inflation that the government try and keep inflation at 2%, and we can see the rate of inflation in the UK. There hasn't been any major periods of deflation, nothing really between zero, although recently inflation rates have been fairly low. For the majority of this time, the rate has been pretty close to the target of 2%.
So how is inflation measured? How does the government come up with this figure? Well, the rate of inflation is measured by looking at the annual percentage change in the level of prices. So on average, what were prices this year compared to last year, and what is the percentage change between the two, cheese and onion? The government then produce figures which they call the Consumer Price Index, and this is often known as CPI. And to do this, they take or look at what is known as a basket of goods. So they try and create a long list of about 700 different things that households on average buy, and monitor the prices of these things. So in the 1980s it would have been these sorts of products, but then they update them over time to include the most popular items in 2015, possibly including this little fella. Most recently, these are items that have been included in the government's measure of inflation: games consoles, online subscriptions, streaming music subscriptions, e-cigarettes, protein powder, craft beer and ale, headphones, mobile phone accessories. The government monitor the prices of all these goods and services, and in fact about 700 of these, you can see at the top there, and they say on average, right, have these prices gone up or down compared to last year, by what percentage, and then they publish those figures. So here is the government's measure. You can see CPI shown here in blue, and you can see, generally speaking, over time that prices have tended to rise, as you might expect or have experienced in your own lifetime. On average, things tend to be more expensive now than they were previously. So we've looked at what is inflation, and we've looked at how inflation is measured. We're now going to look at the effect inflation may have on businesses. Well, why is inflation important? Inflation is important because it affects how much people can buy given their income. So the government want a low level of inflation, and they set a target of 2% inflation per year. If you think about it, back in 1994, how much would a £20 note have bought you? Well, a £20 note probably would have bought you a lot of stuff. But in 2004, that £20 note would probably have bought you less because prices of things have risen. And today that £20 note would buy you even less because, again, prices have risen. So inflation affects how much people can buy given their income over time. If your income doesn't go up, your earnings don't go up, then what you buy will be less if prices are rising. And so that's naturally going to affect businesses. First of all, businesses need to buy supplies, and if there is inflation in our economy, then the costs that the businesses incur will be rising with inflation as well. Now, if their product is price inelastic, then they can pass on those costs to their customers through higher prices and not lose demand. But if their product is price elastic and they're going to lose demand by trying to raise the price, then they might have to just accept lower profits. They might also experience falling sales. As prices rise, their customers, if their incomes haven't gone up, might find that they can afford to buy less. This might have an impact on their levels of capacity, or maybe their levels of employment, and they might have a greater focus on trying to minimize costs. Lastly, if our firms are competing with other companies from around the world, if we have a high rate of inflation here, it's going to make our products' prices rise faster compared to products abroad, meaning people are less likely to buy our products and more likely to buy the foreign products. So we've looked at what is meant by inflation, how inflation is measured, and the effect inflation may have on businesses.